Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Steelers Sanctuary podcast. I'm your host, Dave Rivero from SteelersSanctuary.com. With me is David Korb and Ron Lippock, and we got a very special guest with us. Levon Kirkland is with us. Levon, how you doing, buddy?
I am doing wonderful. Thank you so much for asking.
Thanks for being on the podcast. We really appreciate it. Why don't we start with your time at Clemson a little bit? I was doing a little research before we got on here, and I didn't even realize you didn't play inside linebacker at all. You were a defensive end, right?
I played more. We played a 3-4. So on first down, second down, I was the outside backer. On third down, defensive end.
When did they make the switch or decide that you could be an inside linebacker? Was that when you got to Pittsburgh?
It wasn't in college. It was actually the first person who did it was Art Shell.
Oh, really?
And I was in a Senior Bowl. He was the coach of the Raiders, and he's also a native of South Carolina. So after the first day, I played outside linebacker. He comes up to me. He's like, "Kirkland, we want you to play inside. Have you ever played inside before?" And I was like, "I never played inside linebacker," but I was like, "Okay, coach." In my mind, I was thinking like, "Oh my God, my stock is going to go down. I'm going to get drafted. I'm not going to get drafted. I have no clue about the inside linebacker job." And then something just kind of hit me, and it was just like, just run to the ball. Whatever you do, just go to the ball. And I ended up having, believe it or not, a great practice. And I think everybody from that standpoint saw me moving inside, especially the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that was their initial plans for me. But yeah, I never played inside backer until I got to Pittsburgh.
Was that disappointing at all? Because you were no slouch as an end. I was reading 40 tackles for a loss, 19 sacks in your career at Clemson. Was that?
It was a little bit of a disappointment because I always saw myself. I always wanted to be the Lawrence Taylor, the next one. And it was disappointing at first. But then once I got in, I kind of understood it a little bit better. And I really ended up loving the position. But it was awkward for me. My rookie year, I just didn't have the know-how and the instincts. Like, now, if you run like a sweep, I track you down. But any kind of misdirection, I would probably hit the other inside linebacker.
Well, I had a question for you on that, Levon, because, I don't know how much you follow the Steelers now, but they've got a couple young guys who are, they're looking for much more versatility in their linebacker core and all that. And with a guy who, like you, has gone through that transition, what makes that transition easier? Who helped you make that transition? And what helps you make that transition? Because obviously you did it at an elite level. So, what doesn't work for you like that?
Well, I tell you what, Jerry Oslowski was also an inside linebacker at the time. And I give a lot of credit to Jerry O for helping me to see the position how I should see it. And he was, just really patient, kind with me in showing me. And then after, I got the basics of it, it really took me taking ownership of the position. So I would do, like, after training camp or after practice, I would have to go through my steps because I was athletic enough that I could make a false step and still make the play. But Marvin Lewis would just get on me about making those false steps. So I took it upon myself and like, okay, well, maybe if I get a little better at it. So I really started practicing. It was really more me going out there by myself and just visualizing what teams would do. And I just had a lot of it I had to learn along the way. I remember one time we were playing the Rams. Jerome Bettis was on the team. And I studied film like crazy. I did. I probably had the worst game of my life.
I think Jerome Bettis did that to a lot of people, man.
It wasn't just Jerome, but I was like, the position, it calls for you to be cerebral and smart, but it also calls for you to play in the now, what's happening right now. So you can know the formations and all that stuff and what their tendencies are, but there are human beings in there. Sometimes they run something totally different than what you thought they were going to run. So I had to realize, like, yes, understand what people are doing, but also be able to trust your eyes and play what's happening. So when a lot of guys be like, I watch a bunch of film, I did watch a bunch of film, but when the game occurred, I just kind of took a deep breath and just like, okay, what are they doing at this present moment? That's what matters.
Like that instinct versus film study. You got to like marry those two things. Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of have to say like, okay, you can't be such a robot to think that every time they line up in a formation that they're going to be running that play that you thought they're going to be running. Right. And you have to be, sometimes you have to say, you have to see it and be like, oh, they got it. It's almost like a feel like, oh, they're about to do this. And sometimes you're on it. Like, for example, we played Miami my third year. And I remember Dan Marino coming up to the line of scrimmage. He looked at me. He probably looked at my size and my girth. And he immediately looked at Keith Jackson's like, we're going to take this 99 guy to the house. And I saw that. And I was like, oh, they're trying me. So what I did was I backed up like maybe a yard and a half. Sure enough, they tried to run a play action at me. I'm like, and I looked at the tight end. I'm like, and he was coming out for a pattern. I was like, oh, I turned around with him. And I don't think Dan Marino thought I could make a play on the ball. And so he throws it, I catch the interception. And I was like, man, I just intercepted Dan Marino.
That's highlight.
And that's a good tight end, too.
That's a good
Keith Jackson's a good tight end.
And that was the first time I thought, like, oh, I'm catching on to what people are trying to do. Got it. But it took me about I didn't start my first year. It took me going through that second year, and then I got better.
Just reps.
Yeah, just reps. Yeah. A lot of reps. I mean, what I could tell people, just you got to rep it. You got to see it. You got to study it. And it's not going to be perfect all the time, but you just got to keep at it. Try to keep perfecting your game. If you do that, you're going to become a better player.
After that play, did you talk mad shit to Marino?
No, but you know what's so funny about Dan Marino? I love Dan Marino. I thought he was one of the best. I was coaching in Arizona, and one of the other coaches was a big Dan Marino fan. And I told him about the story. And Dan Marino was walking on the field. I said, come on, let's go meet Dan Marino. I've never really met him. I knew him, playing wise, and we were cordial to each other. And I was like, I even introduced myself. Hey, Dan, Levon Kirkland. He's like, oh, yeah. Hey, how you doing, Levon?
And that jerk who intercepted me.
It was so funny that he remembered that I intercepted him.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
To me, that was a big thrill because I'm like, Dan Marino remembered that I got an interception on it. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. We should tell people if they don't know, if they don't remember you playing. You played at about 275, 280, right? At inside linebacker?
Yeah.
It was amazing.
I was a large linebacker.
But you still had the coverage skills and athleticism. You would carry tight ends down the seam.
It was funny. It was funny. People would talk about my size, but they would respect that I could do everything I could do. And like even Bill Cowher and Dom Capers, they got to the point where they're just like, well, he moves just like anybody else at inside backer, maybe even better. And so let's not worry about it too much.
Yeah.
And it worked because when I was on the field, I didn't feel like I was so much bigger than anybody else. I was just bigger. I really I mean, I worked out everything. It wasn't like I was just eating Big Macs at halftime or anything like that. It was just that I could really, I had the body structure that could put on weight and still run the same 40, still move as fast. So I was just different, but back then you got to understand the game was more so in the box. I mean, it was a lot of running. Yeah. There was a lot of fullbacks coming at me, linemen coming at me. So I really think that my size was really a lot of my advantage.
Absolutely. We should talk a little bit about that coaching staff you had. You had Bill Cowher, Dom Capers, Dick LeBeau, and Marvin Lewis too, right? That was quite a defensive staff.
Yeah, we had John Mitchell, we had Tim Lewis. That was a great staff. And a lot of times too, what I say about when guys get drafted is getting drafted to the right place.
Yeah.
And getting drafted to a place that has a great culture, great coaching, great organization. If you ever notice that most guys who are declared a bust, they usually play for a really bad team.
It's a good point, man.
It's very true.
Have you ever heard a guy who plays for a good team? I mean, there's every once in a while, but a lot of times, usually it comes down to how did the coaches do a good job of developing that player? Is it somewhere that you want to be at? Because, if you had a bad working environment, man, it's just what it does is most of the time it makes you a bad worker because that's the example that you have. Like if you were to hang around 9 crackheads, the 10th crackhead is probably going to be you. So I see it as this. It's the environment that makes a difference.
Yeah.
Because you can have a lot of talent, but if you go into an environment that doesn't really develop your talent or appreciate your talent or mentor your talent, you're just going to be average at the most.
Yep.
So I think that's a big difference. That makes and breaks players.
How about you as a leader and a mentor? Because a lot of the guys saw you that way as you became a veteran player in Pittsburgh. And, a lot of the guys I spoke to talked about you and how you mentored them and how you helped develop them almost as a player coach. What enabled you to take on that role? And, do you remember some of the guys that you worked with that really stand out to you?
Oh, wow. I'm going to tell you what kind of guy I was. It goes back for me. I'm the youngest boy in my family, right? And if you're the youngest boy in your family, it's like you're the runt of the litter, right? I mean, everybody is walking, talking, you're not. Everybody knows how to reach the cabinet, you can't. And people just kind of brush you off. They love you, but they kind of brush you off. You're like, can I go riding with you? They're like, get out of here. Like, no. And these are your siblings. So I never bought into the hazing of players. And back then, as a rookie, when you came in, the veterans really didn't talk to you. A lot of the veterans, the majority of the veterans did not talk to you. They were really not that friendly. And so I never wanted to be that way. And I remember Jerry Oslowski, guys like Jerry O, Merle Hyde, those were the guys who really helped me. And I really appreciated that. So as a veteran player, anytime a young guy came to me and they wanted advice, even if the guy was in my position, I was more than happy to help. Even guys on the offensive side, if they were asking me, like, for example, Amos Zerway playing running back, we're scrimmaging, and he's lying offset from the quarterback, and the whole time he's looking inside, right? He's looking to this landmark.
Teleplaying the whole thing.
I'm like, oh, I know exactly what he's gonna run. So they run it, and I smack him in the backfield. he asked me later, he was like, Kirk, how do you see that? How do you read that so fast? I said, well, Amos, you gave it away. He's like, how? I said, well, you were pointing to where you're going. He's like, pointing. I said, well, most inexperienced running backs are people, they look to where they're going.
Yep.
And I was like, next time when you come up, look different. I like, have wondering eyes. So, because a guy like me or a smart linebacker will, like, they understand body language, and they will pick out, like, oh, he's going to do this. And the cool thing about playing inside linebacker is you become very observant of body language. And so I would always want to help guys be better in their position because it will help us be better. Yeah. So I would try to talk to guys about the game and how I see it, how they could probably see it. And it always kind of worked. I mean, guys looked at me as a leader. Plus, being the inside linebacker calling the signals is kind of an automatically leadership position that I wasn't really good at first. Can I tell you guys a story about?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, here it is. My first year of starting, I took over David Little, who was there for like 12 years. And the thing was, Bill Cowher made the announcement they just cut David Little. So me and David was competing for the position. They just cut him. When he said that, all eyes looked back at me. And I'm like, what? Like, they never discussed it with me. Like Coach Cowher could have called me and told me. They never told me anything, right? So
no pressure. No pressure at all.
So I go into the next practice, and now I'm the starter. And I'm calling the huddle, and the guys, they're like, make the calls. Well, I mean, I'm getting yelled at the whole time by the guys who are playing. Some guys are with me on the defense, and some guys look at me like, I don't know. So after that practice, Bill Cowher comes up to me, and he says, you're going to have to take over the huddle. Doesn't tell me how to take over the huddle. Just
you figure that part out.
I got to take over. You got to take over the huddle. Now think about who I got. Some strong personalities in there.
Oh, yeah.
I got Greg Lloyd, who's the strongest of all the strongest personalities and the alpha male on that defense. You got Rod Woodson, who's not far off from being alpha male. Then you got Kevin Green. So, and Carnell Lake.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of half the team are like veterans and half the team is younger guys. So I'm up front. It takes a certain presence to be up front with those guys.
Yeah.
So I just told myself, like, man, just pretend you're like Singletary until you become that.
Make it till you make it.
So it was classic fake it till you make it kind of thing.
I can't imagine sitting in the huddle with Greg Lloyd and trying to take control of that huddle, man. That must be.
And then one good story about Greg Lloyd is that, because he would say, like, he would just get on me for whatever reason that first year. So we're playing Cincinnati, and Cincinnati had to be our fourth game of the season. And I'm up to here with Greg Lloyd. I'm tired of Greg Lloyd, right? I'm really tired of Greg Lloyd. So I have a booming voice. So my voice, as what people call it, it carries, right? And so I called the huddle one time. And I remember I was talking to Kevin about something, and Greg looks back at me. He said, hey, Kirk, stop calling the huddle, stop calling the call so effing loud. My temperature is like this. I'm done, right? So, you know how the angel and the devil comes to you, and the devil is telling you one thing, but the angel is telling you another thing. But in this case, both the devil and the angel was like, "Are you going to take that? Don't take that from him. You're a Kirkland." Let that brother know what time it is. And so Cincinnati is coming on the line of scrimmage. And I'm like, hey, G. He looks back. They're going through the cadence. I'm like, I call this huddle as effing loud as I want to. He was like, F you, Kirk. I'm like, F you. The ball snaps. So, we got to play the play. So that's over with, but not quite for me, because I'm thinking G. Lloyd is kind of crazy. And G. Lloyd has a black belt. He's a third-degree black belt in Taekwondo.
Jesus.
That's right.
I go, and I'm a big rocked up dude myself now. I'm no chump at all. But I'm thinking like, man, this guy ain't gonna be chopping me all kind of ways. And I don't really want to get in a fight with him. So I kind of rushed up, took my shower, and got out of there. But all night long, I'm thinking to myself, I gotta fight Greg Lloyd. I was sure that me and Greg Lloyd was gonna fight. I gotta fight this guy. So I basically, back then they had the WW, what would Jesus do?
WWJD.
What would Ric Flair do in this situation?
Oh my God.
I'm a big wrestling fan. So I'm like, I'm gonna do something dirty. Because this guy, he's not gonna chop me up in a million pieces. So I go to the facilities. Sure enough, Greg Lloyd is in the weight room. He's working out. And G. Lloyd had this incredible body.
He was ridiculous, man.
He was ridiculous. He had like an 8-pack. Forget a 6-pack. He had like an 8-pack. It was like, like one of those illustrators, how they draw those superheroes. Yeah. That's how Greg Lloyd was, right? He wasn't really that big, though. He was only like 225 or 230, but he was muscle up. Black dude with a bald head, where bald heads was really not in vogue like they are now.
Right.
So usually a guy who wore a bald head was like a bad dude. And so he's working out. I'm like, oh my God, man. I'm gonna have to fight this guy. So his locker is like across from my locker. And but about 15 yards apart. I'm like, oh God. And so he just took a shower. He got his towel wrapped around his waist. He comes walking toward me, and I got my helmet from the hook.
Oh my God.
And I put it behind my back. And I'm like, I'm gonna get cut. They're gonna release me. But he is not gonna get over on me. He is not gonna chop me. I'm going to try to put that Steeler logo on the side of his jaw. That was my plans. I was gonna really hit him with it. He came over to me. He stood in front of me. He's like, that's what I'm talking about. You don't take no junk off nobody. And left.
That's awesome.
Wow.
That's an awesome story, man.
I was like,
go like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I got his respect.
Yeah.
And that was the coolest thing. And me and Greg Lloyd are pals to this day. But boy, I thought I was gonna have to fight him. I was so afraid because I was just a young guy. Here's this guy who's all pro, and me and him just got into an argument. And I don't know what happened to the angel and the devil. They left. They left me by myself. So that's a story about leadership.
Man, that linebacking core you played with, Chad Brown, Kevin Green, Greg Lloyd, that was one of the best ever in Steelers history, man. Can you talk a little bit about those four guys?
Oh, yeah. It was my honor and pleasure to play with those guys. Greg and Kevin brought so much to the table for me and Chad. They really gave us the examples of how to play, how to be a professional, and how to be the best. The great thing I liked about all four of us is that we brought something different to the table, and it all meshed together. Me and Chad probably had one of the best working relationships you will ever see. we were a championship tag team. We played off each other so well. We didn't really hang out, to be honest with you, because he was married, I wasn't married, so we didn't really hang out. But boy, we had a connection, and I think the reason why we had such a good connection is because we had to lean on each other. We were both young. He was in his first year, I was in my second year, and so we used to get it from Coach Kyron and Marvin Lewis because they weren't really coaching Greg and Kevin.
Yeah.
they would even say, "Stop jumping offside," and they'd be looking at me and Chad, and we're like, we're not even we're inside linebacker. What do you mean? Like, they wouldn't even talk. They would coach them through us.
Through you, right? Yeah.
So we got along. We really meshed very well together, and we brought two. I mean, we were both outside backers who were moved to inside. So, it took us my third year. That's when we really started meshing together. That's when we really started playing well. But Kevin was like my pal. He was, and Kevin was, besides Jerry O, when Kevin came in. My second year, Kevin was the guy who was like, Kurt, you got everything, blah, blah, blah. He was one of the first guys, besides Merrill Haas, that invited me over to eat with his family. And
that's awesome.
Until his death, me and Kevin were always like, we would Facebook each other, text each other, and we would say how much we loved each other. And me and Kevin would do pranks on the offense on every Friday. So we had a magical relationship. And then the relationship between all four of us was good. I mean, you had two veteran guys, you had two young guys, and we all wanted to be the very best. And it just made up for an amazing linebacker corps. That was, we were seventh, I think, overall in the NFL. But we probably could have been higher. I think if we win a Super Bowl, that Blitzburg defense would be looked upon as one of the best.
Too. Yeah.
I think it's one of the best ever. Well, you brought it up. Let's talk about it a little bit. Super Bowl 30, Dallas Cowboys. That team was a juggernaut. People don't remember. You guys were 13.5-point underdogs. I looked it up yesterday.
No, really? Wow. Yeah.
And did you feel like you guys had a chance that you could really beat that team? Because they were like, that was their third Super Bowl win.
I swear, I thought we were going to beat them. I really felt that way even that week. Because trust me, besides the Pittsburgh Steelers media, nobody thought we had a chance. And I was asked the question so many times, how are you going to stop Emmitt Smith? How are you going to stop their offensive line? And, at first you're professional about it. You give them their credit. But the competitor in me, what I call the Levon Kirkland in me, was like, damn, those guys. We're gonna beat their ass. And that's how after a while, that's how I felt. I was like, I don't care if they don't know me, they don't think I'm good or whatever. We're gonna mash these guys especially in the run game. So I took it like Michael Jordan would say. I took it personally. I did. I was just like, we're gonna stop these guys. And I remember the first run play, they ran like 20-something yards. I'm like, holy cow. I was like, okay. But we settled down after that, and we played those guys really well.
Yeah,
you played really well.
The turnover.
Yeah, you held Emmitt Smith to under 50 yards rushing.
Yeah, we held Emmitt Smith. And, after the game started rolling a little bit, I really got I really kind of like, okay, this is how we need to attack them in my mind. And so we just went after the run game. Like, screw that. They ain't going to run the ball on us at all. And besides that one run, which he got 21 yards off, we stuffed him the whole game. And then we really did a good job, I thought, defensively, well, we definitely should have won the game. We outplayed them in every way. Suffer. We had 2 turnovers that were huge. That gave them really good field position to score points.
Yeah.
I think even if they got the interception, and we stopped them when they got the interception, they would have scored because they couldn't do it all game long.
Right.
So, yeah.
And that offense was loaded, right? Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin, even Deion Sanders played offense for them a little bit.
Yeah,
he had a big play in that Super Bowl.
They had Moose. They had
Jay Novacek.
Yeah. So they had a squad. There's no question. That offensive line was a beast now.
Yeah, and a Hall of Fame quarterback. Yeah,
they had everything. But and I tell people, I got a sack on Troy.
Yep.
But it wasn't as satisfying that if Emmett came over at the last second, I saw him, he was going to cut me, so I jumped. And I just kind of fanned Troy Aikman. So I guess the pressure from me coming kind of knocked him down, the momentum. I'm telling you, if Emmitt Smith is a second late, I put Troy Aikman in the hospital.
I saw you talk about this in another episode. It's little things in football games, right? If Emmitt Smith's a half second slower.
It's a little stuff. Like, like the Al Pacino thing in Any Given Sunday. There's an inch here, one step slow here, and he's absolutely right. That's how the game goes. And so, but that was a good game for me because it really helped my confidence. And Matt Millen, who was a broadcaster at the time, the guy who was a GM of the Detroit Lions, Penn State linebacker, he got, this is funny how things work, but I was in the locker room and one of the guys that played with Matt Millen, Alboy Mays, he comes up to me and I'm getting ready for the game, right? And Alboy's like, hey, Kirk, let me talk to you for a second. I'm like, what the hell you want, Alboy? Why am I getting ready for this game? And he said, hey, man, talk to Matt Millen. And Matt Millen thinks you're like the dark horse of the team. Like, okay, Matt Millen, I know who Matt Millen is. He said, but he wanted me to tell you that you're seeing the right things, but you're not trusting it. He's like, trust your eyes tonight. It was my aha moment. I'm like, okay. And I started doing that. I just started trusting my eyes. Whatever I saw, I trusted. And I think that helped me elevate myself into the next 2 years where I went to the Pro Bowl.
You were well on your way to like a Super Bowl MVP that game. I mean, you had 10 tackles, a sack. Mm-hmm. So close, right?
Yeah, it was so funny because my brothers reminded me of that fact after the game was over with. They're like, man, I would have won. You would have won the MVP. And I'm like,
definitely.
Thank you so much for letting me know that. I appreciate it.
The salt in the wound.
So much.
Yeah.
And that's what I heard. I heard that from numerous people. I'm from a small town. And, that's what you're like, oh, man, if you'd have won. Or people's like, well, I was going for the Dallas Cowboys, but I want you to play well. So I got both things. And it took everything I could not to swing on them.
Was there chaos on the sideline with Neil O'Donnell at all?
I don't. You know what it was though. I'm gonna tell you what it was, which it was kind of our fault because that year you have to understand we came from 3-4 to really make a great run to the Super Bowl. I think we lost maybe one. We lost the Green Bay game, but I think we lost maybe one game out of 10 games we won. And you see I look back when he throws that interception, we all go like, oh. We all like, oh man, we did everything. And we're only down by 3 points. We got the momentum. I honestly, in my mind, is like, oh, we're going to win this game, man. It's going to be a hell of a story.
Right. I
was like, we're going to win because they can't really score on us. And our offense is doing enough to get some points on the board. So I'm thinking, oh, we're about to win this game. This is it. We're about to win this thing. We're about to pull it off. And I swear, by the time I said that, he throws an interception. And it took our life. It took the momentum that we had.
Yeah.
And if you go back and watch it, you'll see our body language just go,
Yeah.
dang. Then we go on the field, man. Instead of us kind of thinking like, yo, let's stop him right here, make him kick a field goal, we still got a chance. I think we were done. I think we were just like, that's it.
So deflating.
Poster of a game.
Yeah, it was just like, I mean, of course we quit, but it was just like, dang, we get everything.
It was so deflating
back in this game, and this happened, and they got a touchdown, and really that touchdown was kind of on me a little bit because when I scraped, I thought Chad was going to be coming right inside, so I scraped outside. Now in the commentary, they'll tell you that I overran the play. I didn't overrun the play. I thought Chad was going to be right there. I should have just made a tackle, basically. But I just like, that's when you sometimes as a linebacker, sometimes as a player, you're thinking a little too much. And you're thinking like, okay, I'm supposed to be here. He's supposed to be there. Instead of sometimes just like, man, just make the play. You're right there in front of you. Yeah. Just make the ball. Just tackle the ball. And but all before that, that's what I did the whole game. Just making a play. Just making a play. And in that game, I was like, okay, Chad is coming. I'm going to get outside of Moose and Chad should clean up. I guess Chad got called the garbage or something, and Emmett went in and touchdown. So, although I played a great game, I remember that play especially.
Let's talk about the onside kick a little bit. Did you know that was coming? Because I nearly jumped out of my.
He was like, we're going to onside kick it. And I was like, what in the world? I'm thinking like,
what a play, man.
I'm thinking like, oh no. So just keep the field goal. But it was a gutsy.
That was really gutsy,
that was
right?
A brilliant call. That was a bit. But I remember Bobby A. like, you want to go onside kick, and Coach Coward is like, yeah. And that's what I like about. That's what I love about BC.
Yeah.
He was aggressive in his approach. He didn't care if it was a Super Bowl. He's like, no, because nobody in their dreams ever thought kick an onside kick.
I was so shocked. I distinctly remember it.
It shocked everybody. I mean, everybody was like, oh, I mean, I can see Dallas like, oh no. They pulled on us.
I was convinced you guys were going to win that game after that.
That point when we did that, I'm like, oh my God, we're gonna win. Yep. And then we went down, we scored on them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
The game is down to 3. We kicked the ball off, and that's when I made the sack.
Right.
Yep.
And we get the ball back. Pretty good position, I think.
It was all right there.
I'm like, oh, we got it. We're gonna win.
Yeah, I thought you were gonna go ahead. Now I was more worried about that last drive of Dallas, and how that would go, because that would have been a great matchup to end the game, win or lose, with the defense of Pittsburgh going against the offense of Dallas would have been beautiful.
We would have. I tell you, we had them. I mean, they scored 14 points, but it's all turnovers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the first touchdown that Emmett got, he didn't get. He was down.
Yes, that's right.
We tackled him down. He was on his knees. I mean, I remember the play because they ran a lead at me. I got rid of Moose. I'm grabbing Emmett. We surrounded Cardinal Lake, Jason Gill, and we stopped him. He reaches the ball out. And those idiot referees gave him a touchdown. I mean, we are yelling, we are screaming at the referees like he was down. And we were right. We were absolutely right. He did not get a yard. And plus, nobody could run the lead on me during that time. Like, how many teams can you remember that ran the lead on me? Not many.
No.
Nope.
So, yeah, it was disappointing because, man, I wish there was replay back then.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you look back on those 90s teams?
So they scored 14 points off of two turnovers.
Yeah, that was the whole turning point of the game. There's no doubt. The 2 turnovers killed you.
Yeah. So other than that, I mean, they got 10 points on us. at the most.
Yep.
And we settled down. I don't think they would have scored. Without those 2 turnovers, they wouldn't have scored again.
Yeah, that's why I asked you that question with Neil Don, because I'd have been like, Neil, who the hell are you throwing to? What are you doing?
And see, that's the other point. Like sometimes, man, that's why you need a great trigger guy, because I thought Neil was just being robotic. Neil was kind of a robotic kind of player anyway.
Yeah.
He kind of threw to where he's supposed to throw to. And for the most part, he did pretty good. But in that game, it was like, man, just open your eyes. I think Corey Holiday or somebody was wide. I mean, dude, he was so wide open.
The last painful to think about.
Was it a wrong route? There's always this talk.
The
route that Neil didn't know.
Yeah, but you got to, see it.
Yeah.
See it. Yep.
Yeah.
That's that robotic piece that you're talking about. He's throwing to a spot instead of to a receiver.
He's throwing to the spot. Like, I'm going to throw to the spot instead of like, oh, he's not in the spot. Let me buy a little time and throw it. Dude, he was wide open. It was my boy, Corey Holiday.
Yeah.
And Corey was like, Kurt, I would have hit my head in the stands before anybody got me. And it's one of those games which was a good experience, but it's a what if kind of game too. Like, man, if we would have did this, we'd have did that. You know, it would have been lovely if we would have won, but it wasn't meant to be, I guess.
I know it's a team sport, but do you look back on those 90s teams and say, man, the offense held us back a little bit? I mean, the offense was never quite up to par for a Super Bowl team, right? I mean, look, if we're being totally honest.
We had everything, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I just didn't think we had the trigger guy to do it.
The quarterback play, yep.
So close.
It's just a fact.
He had some nice passes in that game, but
yeah. Like he was, I would say Neil was better than the average quarterback.
Yeah.
But he wasn't on that Troy Aikman kind of line.
Yeah.
No, definitely not.
I mean, he probably made more good passes than Aikman, but he didn't. But he made less. He made more mistakes than Aikman.
The turnovers were the thing,
yep.
you know, and
there's no doubt.
But I thought Neil got us there. To be honest with you,
yeah,
I think that pass he throws to Ernie Mills in the Colts game. I mean, that was clutch.
Yeah.
So he was just. I think we were just missing, like maybe, that quarterback.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I mean, we had a defense. Our offensive line was pretty good.
Yeah,
the running game was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our wide receivers were good, and then we had a guy named Cordell Stewart who was a difference maker.
Yeah,
yeah.
We had pretty much what the formula to win a Super Bowl. It's just that we didn't have that quarterback, I thought, that could make a play when it wasn't there. You know what I mean? Like an Aaron Rodgers or a Brett Favre or a Steve Young is not drawn up correctly, but they still can make the play. The great thing about our defense is sometimes we can be in a defense that wasn't great against something, but because we had the players to make up the difference, it didn't really matter sometimes.
Yeah.
And in football, you can have whatever scheme you want to have because they all work and they all don't work. It all works and it all doesn't work. So what makes some of it work or what makes some of it better sometimes? It's the players. Because Rod Woodson, he can cover half the field. Or you got a guy like Cornell Lake who can go from sideline to sideline. So even if you're not in the right defense, sometimes players can make it right. And that's what I meant by quarterback. Neil was a good, serviceable quarterback, probably above average at the time. But I thought that Neil could make a play that wasn't designed to run it this way or run it that way.
Like Ben Roethlisberger kind of quarterback, yeah.
Yeah, like that Super Bowl win against the Cardinals.
Yeah.
It was all, I don't care anybody. You can tell me, hey, Eli Manning made the best throw of all throws. What?
No, that touchdown pass.
That touchdown pass that Ben Roethlisberger made against Arizona Cardinals in the corner of the end zone.
Clutch time.
For like 3 guys, yeah.
That throw is the best throw almost in NFL history.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I don't know why people don't give it the credit it deserves.
It's the Harrison
that throw
interception.
is, the ball goes from a dude's fingertips.
Yeah.
Yep.
He throws that thing in the corner pocket.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's no other place that ball could have been.
It could have been no other place that ball could have went.
Yeah.
Yep.
Having a guy like that, you always got a shot to win.
Yeah. How many Super Bowls do you guys win if you have a quarterback like Ben Roethlisberger in the 90s, man?
At least 2.
Yeah.
I'm saying at least 2. We probably went to 3 Super Bowls, but at least 2.
Yeah. So after that Super Bowl, you went on to have a great career with Pittsburgh, a couple Pro Bowls, All-Pro, 100 tackle seasons left and right. And then I read an article, an interview with you. Your last season with Pittsburgh, they didn't even tell you were cut, right? You found out from a reporter?
I found out from Ed Brissett. I was driving in Charlotte somewhere, and I'm just cruising. And that year, I actually had a pretty good year. The year before.
Yep.
And I knew we were going to have a good team the next year. And that was the team that went all the way to the AFC Championship. But I even said it after we won against San Diego, but we didn't quite make the playoff. Cordell was kind of back into his groove. We were back. Mm-hmm. And I even say, hey, I told the locker room, let's get ready for next year because we're making a run. And so I thought I was going to be a part of that run. I was in really great shape. My weight actually went down from what it was. I had a good productive year. And that's how I found out. And I was just like, I felt like, because I was on the team for 9 years, it wasn't so much that I was getting cut or anything like that. I felt like I deserved a little bit of a heads up.
Yeah.
I felt like I did enough where I should have got a heads up, say like, hey, Levon, this is what we're trying to do. Then it's business. I get it. I understand. But when it's like, I got to hear from every set, come on, man. And then the next day, Bill calls me. And he explains it. And I'm like, Coach, I get that. I said, the only problem I had is why did I have to hear it from Ed instead of hearing it from the organization that I think I put my blood, sweat, and tears in. I think that's okay. We all know it's a business, but I think like we could do the right thing, right?
Oh,
Did
absolutely.
Ed just leak it too soon, and was that the issue, or was it?
He probably leaked it too soon. But that's what they do, though.
Yeah. They want your.
Like you can't blame Ed from hearing something and saying, "Well, let me go ask Levon."
Yeah.
Of course, that's what he's going to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, they're gonna fire him for being the reporter.
Yep.
That he's supposed to do. My thing was, I think the Steelers. I mean, I love the Rooneys. I love Coach Cowher and all them. That was the only thing that I think a guy of my status at the time, being there, being reliable, always there, never missing a game, being pretty consistent. I thought, hey, just call me and say, hey, Kirk, this is what's going on with it. And I would have been like, oh, I get it. I understand.
And you still had a lot left in the tank, right? Because you went on Seattle, had a good season.
And I talked to Mr. Rooney, and I even told Mr. Rooney, I understand. And I appreciate you guys even drafting me. I did the whole spiel. But when I got signed with Seattle, they called me back. And it was like, well, hey, we would like for you to come back. And I was like, there's no way I'm coming back. Because you guys, if I come back, take a pay cut, and you guys cut me anyway, that wouldn't be good for me. And I just said, like, as much as I love the Pittsburgh Steelers, thank you very much. I'm just going to move on.
So I don't blame you at all.
I had to move on because and I think I was in such a comfortable position. It was good for me to go somewhere else and really kind of get back into not being comfortable.
Yeah.
Being somewhere where I
That's a
had
good
to
point.
learn a new system, learn new players. And I actually had a pretty good year that year.
Yeah, you ended up having 100 tackles, right? You did
Yeah.
kind of
Mm-hmm. Had a good year.
flawlessly transition
Yeah.
to another team, man.
I was out in Seattle, so nobody heard you.
Nobody knew.
That's what Chad Brown said too. Chad Brown said the same thing. He went out to Seattle and he said, like,
you out to Seattle, man. Nobody
It's
hears
not the
about
same thing, right?
Ever.
Not the same.
if a tackle's made in Seattle, does anyone hear it? Yeah.
No, nobody hears it.
That's
we
awesome.
had a good linebacker core. We had me, Chad, and Anthony Simmons, which was a really good linebacker.
Yeah,
that is.
Yeah.
So, important question for you: humor on the football on that team. I know you were rumored to be one of the top wardrobe folks on the team and won some of the wardrobe awards. How true is that? And who were the best dressed guys really on that team?
It wasn't that I was the best dressed on the team. I would just really pick on you if you wore something that was crazy in my mind. So when guys came on the plane, if you wore something like one time Charles Johnson, God rest his soul, came on a flight. He had this white suit and this white shirt. He looked like John Travolta from Saturday Night Fever. And so I just started singing a song, ha, 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 staying alive. So the whole plane was singing the song, right?
Oh,
and
man.
Then one time, Keevan Henry came on the plane. Now, Keevan was a well-dressed guy. But this time he came on there with a, those briefcases that in the movies, FBI, they would handcuff themselves with the briefcase. He came on there with that briefcase on, and then he had this tremendous fur coat, and he was late. So he was late to get on the plane, and so he was really sweating. And so we were like, Keevan, do you have a sun under your coat? like how many bears did it take to kill that fur? Or like, what the hell you got in that briefcase? Like,
yeah, right.
You had that briefcase in your playbook. He had like he was carrying some important secret information. And then the best one is when Orpheus Roy came to the plane, and we were in the meetings the morning before, and he had no facial hair, like just a little bit of facial, like a beard. He comes on a flight, and the dude has a full drawn-on beard. I don't know if you guys ever heard about, like, you can get like a Brazilian thing, and they can color in. They can color in.
Really?
Oh my God.
Oh, you guys must have been.
We clowned him. We called him everything from, we call him like Teddy Pendergrass. We started singing the Teddy Pendergrass songs. Barry White. One of the guys called him Blackbeard.
Orpheus Roy was a big dude too. He wasn't no small.
Yeah, he was a big dude. Somebody called him
crazy guy. He was a special teams demon.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, Orpheus Roy is one of them. I tell you, one of the more athletic defensive linemen you ever saw in your life. But we called him everything from anybody who had a black beard. We called him that. But the funniest thing, they call him Blackbeard. So
Tom Zach said you had your own stuff you wore. You had that salmon-colored suit.
Yeah, man. I was more of a personality than most people thought.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you guys are getting that right now.
Absolutely.
But I was a personality. I would do stuff like, I was a big wrestling fan, so I would do stuff like that. I dressed like The Rock one time. I would just have all kind of stuff. I would have all kind of wardrobe stuff. Yeah, so I just, you know what it was? My position was such a pressure position. And to help me not have so much anxiety was I had to kind of cut up before the game, make a lot of fun.
Makes sense.
And my whole philosophy was, hey man, I did everything I had to do from Wednesday until Friday. Sunday before the game, I'm not stressing out.
Yep.
I'm not, I wasn't the one to like, let me see what they. To me, that wasn't going to help me. That's like preparing for a test that you're not prepared for.
Yep.
So I always thought the humor part that everybody knew that I was relaxed, I was ready to go, and for the most part, I played pretty consistently and pretty well. So that humor stuff was just it was a way for me to relax before the game.
Hey, Levon, thanks a lot for doing this, man. This was a great interview. Like I told you off air, I geek out with the 90s Steelers defense, man. That was real right in my wheelhouse, man. It was one of the most fun teams to watch.
It was a great defense. It was great players.
Yeah.
Come back and
special.
Talk to this team. Come back and talk to the Steelers a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, I think we were the team that kind of brought it back,
Yeah, absolutely.
They had the 80s kind of, law in there, kind of not as good. But I think when Kyra came in, we kind of brought things back, and that linebacker crew that we had, that defense with, was all over the place.
Yeah, legendary, man. Hey, thanks a lot. We really appreciate it. I won't take up any more of your time. Again, this is Levon Kirkland here on the Steel Sanctuary Podcast. Man, thanks a lot. This is a great interview.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, man. Have a good one, buddy.
Bye.